Welcome to another Packaging Europe podcast. I'm Tim Sykes, and today's subject is Emerald Technology Ventures, a trailblazing investment platform which was founded in 2000 as Europe's first independent cleantech venture capital fund. This year, Emerald is celebrating its 25th birthday, and that feels like an appropriate juncture to take stock of a quarter century operating in green investment, and maybe thinking about the developments along the way, including the launch of a dedicated packaging fund in 2022, and the insights that we can draw on all of that experience. To guide us through this topic, I'm delighted to be joined by two speakers from Emerald. First of all, we have Gina Dominig, who is Managing Partner and CEO. And secondly, someone who will be familiar to regular listeners of this podcast, Fredric Petit, who is Partner and Co-Head of the Materials and Packaging Fund. Welcome, Gina. Welcome, Fredric.
Hi, Tim. Thanks for
Hi.
us.
So, welcome. And Gina, I'd like to start with you as the founder of Emerald Technology Ventures. Could you tell us, first of all, about your background and how you came to begin this journey with Emerald back in 2000?
Yeah, sure. So my background academically was studied finance many moons ago, but I worked for 10 years at an industrial technology company. It was in the 90s. And I was the head of strategy and M&A. So we were doing a lot of scenario analysis and really believed back then that sustainability trends were going to have a huge impact on the industrial sectors, and not just posing challenges, but also providing opportunities. And that innovation was kind of going to be the critical factor that's going to make these corporations successful or not. And a lot of times they didn't have that innovation in-house. So when we were finished kind of restructuring that large corporation, I left and started out with on that thesis that let's go ahead and find innovative startups that are going to help corporates to address their challenges and help them capitalize on those opportunities.
Okay, great. And looking back over the 25 years, was the packaging and materials space on your radar from the very beginning? Did that seem like a kind of core area? And how has that developed over the years?
Yeah, from the very beginning our sector was a lot about energy and water and materials to a lesser extent. Packaging obviously was already clear that packaging was a problem. But, we always kind of asked three questions, does it work? How much does it cost? And does anyone care? And unfortunately for packaging, it was, does it work? Sort of. How much does it cost? Too much. And does anyone care? It was actually not really. So the first, I would say 15 years, we got some packaging innovation startups approaching us, but really they weren't hitting those criteria. So it really wasn't a big area of interest for us. And it wasn't really, it wasn't until China kind of came out with the big shocking news that they weren't going to take everybody else's waste anymore. And that was 2017, 2018 time period, which really started to change things, right? I think here in Europe and also in the US, they realized we're going to have to deal with our own waste and come up with solutions. So focusing on, whether it's recycling or reducing waste. Then came the corporate commitments to sustainability. That's been a huge, huge driver for us in really all of our sectors that we invest in. And, little by little, the consumer sentiment, even though they still care a lot more about, price and quality and convenience, the environmental impact starts to creep up on their decision tree, if you like. And particularly here in Europe, I think consumers are more aware of the issues that the packaging causes on the environmental side. So it does start to influence some of their decision making, and that's really what counts in the end.
Yeah, and what you've said, it really chimes with my experience entering the packaging media world a little bit later in 2006. I recall that in the first years of my experience within the industry, if sustainability was talked about, it was primarily about lightweighting, material reduction, and really that was basically just a nice way of talking about cost cutting, and so it very much shifted over my period of experience within the industry. I'd be really interested to hear from you, Gina, about the kind of key lessons that you've taken from your experience with Emerald, and the kinds of solutions that you've had to come up with to the demands and the barriers to green investment when much of the world of finance may be looking at other areas as providing greater returns.
Yeah, I've always said kind of our sector it's not easy what we're doing, but we're incredibly committed to it and believe that this is kind of what the world needs. But we do, we're asset managers, right? We do need to make attractive returns. And so that means that there are perhaps interesting solutions out there that we just say, we can't invest in this company because we don't see how we're going to make money, right? We do believe this is the right solution. And fortunately, if you'd like, a lot of corporates then jump in and they're a little bit less sensitive to actually making a financial return on a particular investment because they have other ways to capture value. So I think that's what we have really learned is, we can't be investing in things that have just huge capital expenditure plans because unfortunately that kind of money is typically not available, and we don't want to take that financing risk. And even if it's a solution that we believe, hey, the world really needs this, economics matter, right? Unfortunately, and particularly in packaging, if you think, right, there isn't really a green premium, and we can't be relying on regulation coming in and being enforced in order to drive the economics of these investments. So it has to be something that inherently makes economic sense, right?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. And yeah, homing in on packaging, you launched the Packaging and Materials Fund in 2022. You've already talked about that sort of broader timeline of how things have shifted within this market, but what was it that prompted you to launch a dedicated fund, and why was specifically 2022 the right moment for that?
Yeah, I think that was a moment where we started to see market pull, right? We started to finally see the incumbents, whether it's the brands or the, somewhere along the packaging value chain, starting to get serious about changing the status quo. And really, that was the real trigger that we said, okay, hey, we actually think something's going to happen here. There'd always been interesting innovations, if you like, but we just hadn't seen evidence of market demand. When we started to see, and it's a virtuous circle, right? Because when you start to have market demand, then it attracts really good entrepreneurs to the sector. And, once we start seeing, or the VCs out there start to see these guys hitting their milestones, and we think, oh, well, this might actually be an interesting sector to invest in. So money comes in. The more money that comes in, the more the solutions can scale and companies can make progress. And so I think that's kind of that flywheel almost, seeing that this is starting to actually pick up momentum. And that's for us, always, it's always too slow for us. We always wanted to, of course, go faster. But that's really what triggered us to launch the fund. And, economics change, especially in sectors where you're dealing with commodity prices. And one has to be careful, obviously, what types of risk we're taking. But there are still, companies that we find come up really interesting solutions that can withstand some of these fluctuations in alternative, virgin plastic prices, or on the energy side, of course, as well, right? The price of oil drops, and then all of a sudden the economics of the alternatives obviously change.
Yes, thank you. So we've reached 2022, and this is the point at which Fredric becomes a new hero in our story of Emerald. So I'd like to bring Fredric in and ask, following on from that topic of the launch of the Packaging Materials Fund, what was it that attracted you to come on board to Emerald?
Yeah, thank you, Tim, and a great question. And I remember when Emerald reached out first, I was a little bit reluctant. I said, well, it's a Zurich-based venture capital firm. I'm a chemist by education. I have a corporate background. I have a startup background, but I'm not an investor. And then Gina and the team explained me the very unique proposition of Emerald, which is very different than from other venture capital firms, being the fact that we work almost exclusively with corporate partners. And being at a corporate for the largest part of my career, being responsible for innovation and for open innovation, I knew how important it is for corporates to have a window on the world, to have a view on what's happening in the startup world, and to be able to reach out to the most promising startups. And next to that, we do not only invest in startups, that's what we do, but we actually also really support our portfolio companies to realize their full potential. We'll be sitting on boards, we really work with the management team. And after my corporate career, I was a CEO of a startup myself. And I knew how important it was as a CEO startup, being sometimes a little bit on your own, and to have not only capital available for your projects, but also support on how you go about your business models, support how you go about your financials, how you go about your fundraising. And the startups also need big friends. So they need the corporates as suppliers, as manufacturing partners, as customers. So this unique proposition that Emerald proposes, say we bridge between corporates and startups, and the vehicle how we do it is being the open innovation partner and venture capital partner for the corporates. And now we are looking into launching a new fund related to addressing the plastic waste issue, packaging, that say, hey, this is a unique opportunity for me to leverage my corporate background, to leverage my startup background, and my interest in sustainability, in business, in innovation and packaging. So then it was a fairly easy and quick decision.
Great, yeah. And you've just explained the central role that corporates play in what you're doing. It strikes me that we're at an interesting point in the packaging sustainability journey where we see, after a flurry of pledges and real progress towards circular economy and other metrics, that we're starting to see some of the big CPGs scaling back or withdrawing some of their pledges. A lot more talk about caution about how far or how quickly we can get to some of the goals. How are you seeing that with your relationship with corporates? Are they pushing back on some of their targets and thereby their willingness to invest?
Yeah, so for me, these are two different questions, Tim. So are they pushing back on their climate targets? You may say yes, but I think the criticism that some of these large corporates face is a little bit unfair. When they put out their climate targets back in 2020 or even earlier, I mean, this was a dot on the horizon. I said, we need to have this percentage of our packaging recyclable. We need to have Y% of our packaging based on recycled content. It was targets to initiate movement. They had no insights how realistic these targets are. I think 5 years down the road, we learned a lot. We have become more realistic in what is achievable. So I think also the targets that the corporates have set out now, and maybe indeed they are a little bit lower than they were earlier, but they have become more realistic, whereas in the early days they were more ambitious. How does it relate to their investment appetite? I think the investment appetite is still there. And again, there is the need. I think today it's clearly that the regulations are pushing change, are driving change. As some of one FMCG company told me, the PPWR is going to blow up in our face, and the consumer preferences have not changed. So this need for investment is still there. You need to have the solutions available to be able to respond. But fair enough, it's the uncertain economic outlook and the geopolitical tensions and which have happened over the last few years that have put a little bit brake on their investments, much more from a financial economic perspective than from an innovation perspective. So it's a balancing act. I think the ambitions have become more realistic. The need to change is still there. The economic situation is holding back some investments, but the industry is continuing this change.
Thank you. Well, you've mentioned regulation and PPWR, and I wanted to ask you, Fredric, about the extent to which PPWR is the key catalyst for what you're trying to achieve, and correspondingly, how fundamentally do the corporates see that as the strategic driver? Like, how seriously are they taking the targets that they need to meet according to PPWR?
Yeah, I think they take them very serious. I mean, the fact that the plastic and packaging waste directive has now changed into a plastic and packaging waste regulation means that the industry is moving. And it's not just the PPWR, it's also the UK's EPR, the regulations in New York and in California. And also don't forget the UN Global Plastic Treaty, which is currently under negotiation, which has an ambition to eliminate plastic pollution by 2040. I think I've been reading that this is the most lobbied treaty ever.
Yes.
Because everybody is willing to protect their interests, and everybody is seeing, we need to change, and it's happening. So yes, I think the regulations today are the most important driver for change, and I would say the corporates have no other choice than to move ahead. Because else they will have a not a differentiated advantage if they do not innovate and stay ahead of the game.
Thank you. Well, a final question to both of you, and I'd like to look into the near future, not perhaps the next 25 years, but that's beyond anyone's pay grade. But maybe thinking about the next 3 to 5 years. Where do you see the opportunities in the packaging and materials space over that period of time for Emerald and for your investors? Let's start with Gina.
Yeah, I think anything that's closing the loop. I think that's certainly an area of interest. A lot of times it also has strong economic drivers as well. Smart packaging, I think we see a lot of really interesting smart packaging deals as well. Sensors, active materials, there's lots of different functionality that can be added there. And of course, anything that lowers the environmental footprint. So driving not just new features with smart packaging, you've got then closing the loop, driving a lot of the economics. But anything that obviously improves the environmental footprint, whether it's leading to using less water, less energy, less materials, I think that's also still of very high interest. Kind of speaking from a higher level, I'm sure Fredric has much more detailed examples.
So I mean. You asked the question in the beginning, what triggered Emerald to launch a dedicated packaging innovation fund? We thought that at that moment there was a tipping point. And then as any player in any industry, you should be ready for tipping points to happen. And in the packaging industry, there are a lot of tipping points that are underway. whether it's all connected packaging, whether it's a paperization, whether it's reuse, whether it's recycling. And corporates need to be resilient. They need to have these options available to be ready to scale. So they are all working on their solutions toolbox. And indeed, if you look at the lower footprint materials, I mean, initially there was a lot of focus on recycling, on chemical recycling, on bio-based. I think there the main trend today is the whole paperization trend, and also especially in wet molded fiber, in dry molded fiber. But it also comes with functionality questions. So how do you apply the right barrier coatings, and can they be plastic free? Can they be recyclable? Can they be repulpable? And on the smart packaging, it's indeed, as Gina was saying, it's the active packaging. So how can you find solutions where you can extend the shelf life of the product by oxygen scavengers, ethylene scavengers solutions, and the connected packaging is opening up a huge new opportunity, addressing challenges with regard to track and trace, anti-counterfeit, and new consumer engagement models. I mean, digital product passports is a hot topic these days, providing more transparency over the value chain, providing more sustainability data. And another point I want to mention is the whole topic of reuse. Also, the PPWR requires a lot of reuse. It's a very difficult ask, and it's not only about design. So how do you design a reusable and a refillable packaging, which still provides the consumer convenience, but it's also largely a business model challenge. And how do you get the incentives right that people will return their packaging? How can you apply RFID tags, QR codes, avoid the deposits for reuse, implement ease of payments? And you see reuse is now really taking off we are entering the summer, so at events, at festivals, at stadiums, at arenas, they have a strong drive. And from there, we need to expand that to cosmetics industry, food and beverage, personal and home care. And if I may, one last point is the whole opportunities provided by artificial intelligence. Whether it's that applied in sorting of waste, applying computer vision, artificial intelligence models to faster and cheaper identify the waste, sort the waste. It's the AI supporting better designs, new designs, compliant designs, and also the AI as an enabler for connected packaging and building new consumer engagement.
Yeah, and everything that you said there really chimes with our experience of the kinds of innovations we're seeing emerging through the barometer that we have with our Sustainability Awards competition, which Fredric is kindly serving as a judge of. Thank you, Fredric. Maybe we could just end by asking you what message you would send out to corporate partners or startups that might be interested in working with you.
Yeah, I think there have never been more startups in the packaging space than today. So it's in a very exciting period. Like you said earlier, Tim, the early days, it was still a little bit explorative. Today's it's hot. And it's hot from corporates and it's hot from startups. So when you are a corporate who is having some innovation challenges, how to get to more sustainable packaging solutions, and you want to create this window to the world of startups, please reach out. We have our team of more than 50 people in place in Zurich, Toronto, and Singapore, ready to support you as an open innovation partner and as a venture capital partner, making the right introductions to startups that can help you address these challenges. On the other end, if you're a startup and you have a promising solution in the broader packaging space, and you're looking for capital, you're looking for support, and you're looking for these big corporate friends, please reach out to us, and we're happy to discuss with you, to review the opportunity and make introductions where requested by our corporate partners.
Thank you, Fredric. Well, I'll give my own shout out as well to our Sustainable Packaging Summit, which is taking place over 3 days, 10th to 12th of November in Utrecht in the Netherlands. And there we're going to be trying to knit together a lot of the topics that we've been discussing today, the strategic sustainability goals for packaging and packaged goods, the kinds of demands that regulation in regional and global is going to place on packaging, and the innovation that is going to have to take place in materials, paperization, circular plastics, and formats like reuse in order to meet those demands. And lastly, we'll also be presenting some curated selection of very, very interesting startups that are ready for the expansion phase, including some of the startups that have worked with Emerald. So we would love to see you there at the event, and I know that Fredric will be there as well. For now, thank you so much, Gina and Fredric, for joining us and sharing your story. I'm sure we will be coming back to cover the next developments over the next few years, and maybe we'll still be around in 25 to review a half century of Emerald Technology Ventures.
Thank you, Tim.
And thank you to everyone for listening. We will be back soon with another podcast. Goodbye.